My name is Valerie Lee, and at 32, I thought I understood my family's dynamics. As the older sister by 4 years, I'd always been the responsible one, the tech-savvy daughter who helped everyone with their computer problems and managed the family's digital life. What I didn't understand was how deeply betrayal could cut when it came from someone you'd trusted completely. Our family had always been tight-knit, or so I believed. Mom and Dad raised Whitney Lee and me in a modest 2-story house where Sunday dinners were sacred and family loyalty was everything. Whitney, my younger sister, had always been the social butterfly, charming, outgoing, and effortlessly popular in ways I never was. While I buried myself in coding boot camps and IT certifications, she collected friends like souvenirs. When Whitney brought Marcus Watson home 2 years ago, I was genuinely happy for her. Marcus was different from her usual boyfriends. Stable, thoughtful, and surprisingly interested in my work. He'd ask detailed questions about my projects, listen intently when I explained complex systems, and even help me troubleshoot issues when I was struggling with particularly challenging clients. "You're so lucky to have such a supportive sister," he'd tell Whitney during family gatherings, always making sure to include me in conversations. When I was having difficulties with a major client's network overhaul last spring, Marcus spent hours listening to me vent about the technical challenges and my frustration with feeling overwhelmed. The engagement announcement 6 months ago felt natural, expected even. Marcus had become part of our family rhythm. He knew Dad's coffee preferences, remembered Mom's book club recommendations, and could navigate Whitney's mood swings better than I could. During the engagement party, he pulled me aside. "I want you to know how much your support means to both of us," he said, his hand on my shoulder. "Whitney's told me how you've always looked out for her, and I hope you know I'll do the same." I believed him completely. But lately, something felt off. Conversations would stop when I entered rooms. Whitney seemed distant during our weekly coffee dates, checking her phone constantly and giving vague answers about wedding planning. Even Mom started acting strangely, asking careful questions about my work that felt more like fishing expeditions than genuine interest. The first real warning sign came 3 weeks ago during a family barbecue. I overheard Marcus on the phone in Dad's study speaking in hushed tones about technical incompetence and major client disasters. When he saw me in the doorway, he quickly ended the call and smiled, that same warm smile that had always made me feel included. "Just work stuff," he said, but something in his eyes had shifted. Last week, a colleague mentioned hearing interesting stories about my recent projects, but when I pressed for details, she became evasive. Another client seemed unusually informed about challenges I'd only discussed with family members. The pieces weren't fitting together yet, but a cold certainty was growing in my chest. Something was very wrong, and it centered around the man my sister was planning to marry. The foundation of my trust in Marcus had been built over 2 years of shared family moments and genuine connection. When Whitney first brought him home for Thanksgiving, I was skeptical. My sister had a history of dating men who either ignored her family or tried too hard to impress us. Marcus was different. He asked thoughtful questions about my cybersecurity work, remembered details from previous conversations, and never made me feel like the awkward older sister tagging along. Our bond deepened during what I now realize were carefully orchestrated moments. When I was struggling with imposter syndrome at my new position at TechGuard Solutions, Marcus became my unexpected confidant. He'd listen patiently as I explained the pressure of being one of the few women in my department, the weight of managing million-dollar client accounts, and my fear that one major mistake could derail everything I'd worked for. "You're brilliant, Valerie," he'd say during those late-night conversations at family gatherings. "Don't let anyone make you doubt that." He protected my privacy and kept my secrets safe, or so I believed. When I confided about my anxiety attacks before major presentations, he never mentioned it to Whitney or my parents. When I shared my struggles with the Henderson Industries account, where their outdated systems made every security upgrade feel like defusing a bomb, he offered genuine support without judgment. The Henderson project became my biggest vulnerability. Their CEO, Richard Henderson, was old school and skeptical of young consultants, especially women. Every meeting felt like a test I was destined to fail. The company's network infrastructure was a nightmare. 15 years of band-aid solutions and incompatible systems that crashed if you looked at them wrong. I spent months developing a comprehensive security overhaul, working 18-hour days and sacrificing weekends. Marcus knew every detail of my struggles. During Whitney's birthday dinner in March, I'd vented about Henderson's latest impossible deadline. Marcus listened intently as I explained how the client kept changing requirements, how their IT department resented outside consultants, and how I was losing sleep over the possibility of a catastrophic failure that could destroy both their business and my reputation. "You're carrying too much weight," Marcus had said, refilling my wine glass. "Maybe you need to set better boundaries with difficult clients." I thought he was being supportive. Now I wonder if he was gathering ammunition. The first crack in my trust appeared during a family Easter brunch. I arrived late after an emergency call from another client, exhausted and frustrated. As I joined the conversation, I noticed Marcus quickly changed the subject from what sounded like a discussion about workplace competence. Whitney avoided eye contact, and Mom's smile seemed forced. "Everything okay at work, honey?" Dad asked, but his tone carried an undertone I couldn't identify. "Just the usual chaos," I replied, but the atmosphere felt charged with unspoken knowledge. 2 weeks later, I ran into Sarah Chen, a former colleague who'd moved to a competing firm. Her greeting was friendly but cautious. "I heard you've been having some challenges with the Henderson account," she said carefully. "If you ever need advice on managing difficult legacy systems, I'm happy to help." My blood chilled. The Henderson project was confidential, and I'd only discussed the technical details with my immediate team and Marcus. Sarah's knowledge of specific challenges suggested information had leaked beyond my family circle. "Where did you hear about Henderson?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. Sarah's expression shifted uncomfortably. "Oh, you know how small our industry is. Word gets around." But I knew our industry, and word didn't get around about confidential client struggles unless someone was deliberately sharing information. The pieces began falling into place with sickening clarity. Marcus's questions about my work had always been detailed, probing. He'd ask about specific clients, technical challenges, and my emotional state regarding difficult projects. I'd interpreted his interest as caring support, but now I recognized it as systematic information gathering. During Whitney's engagement shower last month, I'd overheard Marcus talking to his groomsmen about insider knowledge and professional networking opportunities. When he noticed me listening, he'd smoothly transitioned to discussing wedding venues, but the damage was done. The final confirmation came through LinkedIn. While reviewing my professional network, I noticed Marcus had connections to several people in my industry, connections that had been established recently. His profile, which I'd never scrutinized before, showed he'd been actively networking with cybersecurity professionals, marketing himself as someone with insider insights into industry challenges and emerging talent. My hands shook as I scrolled through his activity. He'd been commenting on posts about workplace competence, sharing articles about managing difficult clients, and engaging with discussions about professional development in ways that felt uncomfortably familiar. The language echoed conversations we'd had during family gatherings, private moments when I'd trusted him with my deepest professional insecurities. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Marcus hadn't been supporting me. He'd been mining my vulnerabilities for professional gain. Every confession about my struggles, every moment of doubt I'd shared, every technical challenge I'd described, had been weaponized and shared with my work colleagues and industry contacts. He'd taken my trust, my family bond, and my private struggles and turned them into networking opportunities and professional gossip. The man my sister was planning to marry had systematically destroyed my professional reputation while pretending to be my ally. The worst part was realizing how calculated it had been. Marcus had positioned himself as my confidant specifically to gather information. He'd encouraged my openness, created safe spaces for me to share my fears, and then broadcast my struggles to anyone who might find them professionally useful or entertaining. As I sat in my apartment, staring at the evidence of his betrayal, one thought consumed me. Marcus had shared my technology struggles with my work colleagues, and now everyone in my professional circle knew about my private moments of doubt and vulnerability. The engagement was in 3 weeks, and I had to decide whether to destroy my sister's happiness or let her marry a man who had systematically betrayed her family. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I couldn't face my colleagues knowing what they might have heard about me through Marcus's networking activities. Instead, I spent the day gathering evidence, screenshotting his LinkedIn posts and connections, documenting the timeline of our conversations versus his professional activities. By noon, I had a clear picture of Marcus's betrayal. He'd been systematically sharing details about my technology struggles with industry contacts for months, positioning himself as someone with insider knowledge about workplace dynamics and emerging talent challenges. My private moments of vulnerability had become his professional currency. I needed an ally, and there was only one person in my family I could trust completely: my younger brother, Valerie Lee. At 28, he'd always been the family skeptic, the one who questioned motives and saw through facades. If anyone would believe me about Marcus, it would be Valerie. I drove to his apartment across town, my evidence folder clutched in my hands. Valerie opened the door in his weekend clothes, immediately sensing something was wrong. "Val? You look terrible. What's going on?" I pushed past him into his living room, spreading the printed screenshots across his coffee table. "I need you to look at something, and I need you to promise you'll hear me out completely before you react." Valerie sat down, his expression growing serious as he examined the evidence. I walked him through everything: the timeline, the conversations, the professional connections, the way Marcus had positioned himself to gather information about my struggles. "Jesus, Val," Valerie whispered, looking up from the papers. This is really messed up. He's been using you." "I know, but Whitney's engagement party is next weekend, and the wedding is in 3 weeks. How do I tell her that her fiancé has been systematically betraying her family for professional gain?" Valerie leaned back, running his hands through his hair. "You have to tell her. But you know she's not going to believe it initially. She's completely infatuated with him. That's what I'm afraid of. She'll think I'm jealous or trying to sabotage her happiness. Then we need more evidence. Something undeniable." Over the next few days, Valerie and I worked together to build an airtight case. He helped me trace Marcus's professional connections, identifying which of my colleagues he'd been networking with and when. We discovered he'd been particularly active in reaching out to people from my company right after family gatherings where I'd shared my struggles. The pattern was unmistakable. After Thanksgiving, when I'd confided about my difficulties with a major client project, Marcus had connected with 3 people from my department within a week. After Christmas, when I'd shared my concerns about keeping up with new technologies, he'd joined 2 cybersecurity groups and started posting about industry adaptation challenges. Valerie also helped me understand something I'd missed. Marcus wasn't just sharing my struggles randomly. He was strategically targeting people who could benefit his own career aspirations. He'd been job hunting, and my vulnerabilities were his way of demonstrating industry insight and professional awareness. "He's been using your struggles as case studies," Valerie explained as we reviewed the evidence. "Look at this post." He's talking about observing young professionals navigate complex technical challenges like, "You're a specimen he's been studying." The realization made me physically sick. Marcus had turned my trust into a professional advantage, my family bond into a networking strategy. On Thursday, 5 days before Whitney's engagement party, I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I called my sister and asked her to meet me for coffee, claiming I wanted to discuss wedding plans. Whitney arrived at our usual cafe glowing with pre-wedding excitement, immediately launching into details about flowers and catering decisions. I let her talk for a few minutes, trying to find the right moment to destroy her happiness. "Whitney, I need to tell you something about Marcus, and I need you to listen to everything before you respond." Her expression shifted immediately, defensive walls going up. "Val, if this is about him being too friendly or something silly like that, it's not silly, it's serious." I pulled out my folder of evidence. "Marcus has been sharing private information about me with my work colleagues. He's been using our family conversations for his professional networking." Whitney's face went through several emotions: confusion, disbelief, then anger. But the anger wasn't directed at Marcus. "Are you serious right now? 5 days before my engagement party, you're trying to sabotage my relationship with some conspiracy theory?" "It's not a theory. Look at the evidence." But Whitney refused to look at the papers. She stood up, her voice rising enough to draw stares from other cafe patrons. "I can't believe you're doing this. Marcus has been nothing but supportive of you, and this is how you repay him? By making up lies about him using you?" "Whitney, please just look at the evidence." "No, I'm not going to enable your jealousy. You've always had trouble with my relationships, but this is a new low, even for you." She stormed out, leaving me sitting alone with my evidence folder and the stares of curious strangers. That evening, my phone exploded with family drama. Whitney had called our parents, painting me as a jealous sister trying to destroy her engagement with fabricated evidence. Mom called first, disappointed and confused. Dad followed with a lecture about family loyalty and supporting each other's happiness. Only Bradley believed me, and even he was frustrated by Whitney's refusal to examine the evidence. "She's not thinking clearly," he said when he came over that night. "She's so invested in this perfect wedding fantasy that she can't see what's right in front of her. Maybe I should just let it go. Maybe it's not worth destroying the family over." "Val, he betrayed you. He used your trust and your struggles for his own gain. That's not something you just let go." The engagement party arrived on Saturday, and I almost didn't attend. But Bradley convinced me that staying away would only make me look guilty of Whitney's accusations. The party was held at our parents' house, the backyard decorated with string lights and flowers. Marcus played the perfect fiancé, charming everyone with stories about his career prospects and future plans with Whitney. Watching him work the room, knowing what I knew about his methods, made my skin crawl. During the toasts, Marcus spoke about family bonds and trust, about how grateful he was to be welcomed into our family circle. The irony was suffocating. Later, as I stood alone by the dessert table, Marcus approached me with a concerned expression. "Val, Whitney told me about your concerns. I want you to know that I understand family dynamics can be complicated during big transitions like this." His condescending tone, combined with his complete lack of acknowledgement of his betrayal, pushed me over the edge. "Cut the act, Marcus. I know what you've been doing. I know about your LinkedIn activity, your networking strategy, your professional connections with my colleagues." For just a moment, his mask slipped. I saw calculation in his eyes, a quick assessment of how much I knew and how much damage I could do. "I think you're misunderstanding some professional networking activities," he said carefully. "Sometimes industry connections happen naturally through family conversations." Naturally. "You systematically targeted my colleagues after I shared my struggles with you. You turned my trust into your professional advantage." Marcus glanced around, ensuring no one was listening, then leaned closer. "Even if that were true, who's going to believe you? Whitney thinks you're jealous. Your parents think you're trying to sabotage her happiness. You have no credibility here." His confidence in his position was infuriating, but it also revealed something important. He knew exactly what he'd done, and he believed he was untouchable because of his relationship with Whitney. That's when I realized I needed to change my strategy. Instead of trying to convince Whitney directly, I needed to let Marcus expose himself. 12 months later, I sat in the community center conference room, watching 8 people arrange their chairs in our familiar circle. The support group had grown from just 3 members when I'd started it 6 months ago. "Welcome, everyone," I said, looking around at faces that had become dear to me. "Let's begin with our usual check-in." Sarah, a teacher whose brother had shared her classroom management struggles with his education consultant friends, spoke first. "I got promoted to department head last week. My principal said my innovative approaches caught the district's attention." The group applauded softly. We'd learned to celebrate these victories together. Marcus's scheme had ultimately unraveled spectacularly. After our confrontation at the engagement party, I'd started documenting everything. Screenshots of his LinkedIn connections with my colleagues, timestamps of our conversations, records of when specific information appeared in his professional communications. The breakthrough came when Catherine discovered Marcus had been recording our family dinners on his phone, claiming he wanted to capture memories, but actually mining our conversations for professional intelligence. She'd found the recordings while helping Whitney plan their wedding playlist. Whitney's world had shattered when she realized the man she loved had been systematically exploiting her family's trust. The engagement ended 3 weeks later, after she discovered he'd also been sharing her father's business strategies with competitors in his industry. Our parents, forced to confront the evidence, had apologized to me with genuine remorse. Dad had even helped me document the professional damage for a complaint I'd filed with Marcus's company's ethics board. The hardest part, I continued to the group, was learning that some family relationships survive betrayal, while others don't. Whitney and I are still rebuilding trust, but we're making progress. Marcus had lost his job when his company investigated his unethical networking practices. He'd moved to another state, but not before Whitney had made sure his professional reputation reflected his character. "What I've learned," said David, whose sister had shared his financial struggles with her real estate investor boyfriend, "is that protecting ourselves doesn't make us paranoid. It makes us wise." The group nodded in understanding. We'd all learned to value our privacy differently, to share more carefully, to trust more slowly. As the meeting ended and people gathered their things, I felt the familiar sense of peace that came from turning pain into purpose. These monthly gatherings had become a sanctuary where people could process family betrayal without judgment. Walking to my car under the evening sky, I thought about how quiet my life had become since cutting contact with Marcus and establishing clearer boundaries with my family. No more walking on eggshells, no more second-guessing every conversation, no more wondering who might be listening with ulterior motives. My phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. "Dinner Sunday? Just us. I'm making your favorite pasta." I smiled, typing back my acceptance. Some relationships had been damaged beyond repair, but others had grown stronger through the testing. The silence in my car felt different now. Not empty or lonely, but full of possibility. I'd learned the difference between isolation and peace, between being alone and being protected. It was finally over, and the silence felt earned.